Hi, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Hope you had a great week of trading. Today, we're going to cover this week in QQQ and the NASDAQ-100. This is a forward-looking view into next week, or the week of June 28th, 2021. Let's just jump into it. Multiple people had asked us for this, is just to keep essentially a scoreboard of how did the companies we talked about actually perform. Now, everything that we present on this is from Prep2Gro's AI and big data platform, and it recommends how companies will perform and how do they do it going into earnings. So far, since we started tracking this and documented on prep2grow.com/QQQ, since from March 21st, we've been 14 for 14. We've got them all correct. They've essentially done exactly what the algorithms have projected they would do. The latest one was Accenture. They had a great quarter. We projected that they were going to have a great quarter. They were going to crush it. But due to the stock price already being high, it would have a limited bump. And if you saw another high-tech company performing the same way Accenture did, it would be quite a bit of bump, 5% or more. They only jumped during the day. I think they were up the max 2%. Overnight, they're much higher, but they didn't really have a pop that would be typically in alignment with a company that did that well. And just frankly, their stock is pretty high. So there wasn't a lot of room for growth. And that's exactly what happened. Those are our projections, and it exactly happened that way. I will post them every single week. Next week, we're going to cover Micron, and those are the ones we're going to project on. So let's talk about the weekend review. We expected that this would be the week where the bull cycle that we're in ended, and it would start the bear cycle. Kind of happened today, Friday. The market's down, or I wouldn't say the market, QQQ at the time of this recording is down. We see that we expected the bull to end early in the week, but there's certainly some great macro news that came out, and so that propelled it a little bit longer than we're expecting. But for sure, most of the signals we have seen, a vast majority of them, are looking like we're going to go into a bear cycle. However, if you've invested in the QQQ since the beginning of the year, you're up 11.4%, which is great. It's up 2.1% at the time of the recording, week over week, which is a great week. Again, expecting bear to start this week, and it might have started today. Prep2Grow forecast and the analyst forecasts are completely flat. We're way more bullish than the analysts are. They're projecting 33%. We're expecting 45%. But Qs are going to continue to accelerate halfway through, up 11%. Are they on a trajectory to hit 22%, 23% gain for this year? Maybe. Certainly it's going to be a good growth, but I think the market's going to pull them back a little bit. But they should certainly end the year higher than 11.4% as our projections. So let's talk about some housekeeping. Prep2Grow is going through a seed round. We'd love you all to be a part of it, become a part-time investor and part owner of Prep2Grow. You can find us at wefunder.com/prep2grow. This is our public crowdfunding side of this. We have a lot of perks related to this. To date, 100% of our investment through this crowdfunding has come from customers. So we feel that's a strong testament to the performance of Prep2Grow. So if you're interested, love for you to join us on this journey of disrupting the $1 trillion financial advisor, robo-advisor market. So let's jump into next week. Starting of June 28th, we think it's going to be a small bear. We're being a little bit conservative on that. There's a lot of strong signals about potentially a bigger bear than that. But there's some good macro conditions that are happening that may kind of not make as big of an impact, but certainly looking at a bear cycle start. Some of the reasons. There's some good things happening in the market for sure. The QQQs are growth. They're accelerating to Q3, the non-QQ growth. They're accelerating. I won't say they're accelerating, but their growth is outpacing their stock price growth. So like a SPY would be a great place as a potential recommended area to look at. Is that when growth is higher than stock price growth, that's a sweet spot for Prep2Grow. We've always found that those two always meet back in the middle. They level out, which typically pushes the stock price up. And so that's what we look for. That's our sweet spot as a Prep2Grow subscriber or Prep2Grow, us generally investing on our own. There's some macro issues, inflation, stimulus ending, Inflation had some good news this week, but stimulus ending may cause some impacts. Certainly, rental protections, unemployment claims and earnings that they get from that, unemployment benefits, excuse me. Also, the QQQs that are near a 52-week high, which is always acts as some of a bear. Now, Qs have punched through that several times over the last year, but typically you get a bit of a slowdown before it does another breakout. From a bear versus bull signal, a lot more bear than bull, and I wouldn't say a lot of volume compared to the bull, but certainly more signals. I think generally people are very bullish on the market. We're seeing a lot of signals that don't necessarily reflect that sentiment. So let's take a look a little more closely at the number of bear signals. So if we look at the last 3 months and our projections, May we hit a bear, pulled back, definitely happened. June we predicted a bull, a 3-week, 4-week bull, and that's happened. We think it's at its tail end. If you look at the x-axis, usually that's our date. We look 30 days out, and so if we're saying on May 2nd there's going to be a June bull, we're projecting that by the beginning of June or right at the beginning of June there'd be a bull. That's exactly what happened. July, going into July, I think there's going to be a bit of a bear. The signals are pretty strong around that bear, so use caution around that. Again, this is what our algorithms are projecting. This is not a financial advice. This is what our algorithms are kicking out to us, and historically they've been pretty accurate. So let's talk about who's announcing next week. So finally some Qs are announcing. Micron, love Micron, great company. Xilinx, a little weird. It's maybe some data that's incorrect. Most of the sites we collect data off of are publishing that Xilinx is announcing this week, which is odd because they just announced their fiscal year end on May 4th, 5th-ish. So I don't think that's fact. We'll touch on them for a second, but I don't think they're actually announcing, which is, I don't know why they're showing up in the external data we collect. And it's not on their site either. So there's just a disconnect. But we're going to talk about just, I don't know why, maybe there's something, announcement or some conference that's conflicting and messing up the external data. But Xilinx on their analyst site doesn't support that there's an announcement this week. But odd, we'll talk about it. Unusual activity, Nvidia, a lot of unusual activity on Nvidia. If you're into jets, the Jets ETF, JetBlue, we won't cover in this because we're just covering high tech. JetBlue had a ton of unusual option activity from the call side. It was like 27 on one of their options. We'll pull it up on the site just to cover since you talked about it. But a lot of unusual option activity going on with companies might get the Jets, and I love the Jets, hoping a big boom from them. But let's jump into Prep to Grow, and we'll talk about these details. So this is Prep to Grow. For those who aren't familiar with it, for those of you that are in beta with us, this is Portfolio. We'll cover just on this real quick, touch on this real quick. So Portfolio allows our subscribers to have an AI-generated investment portfolio created from them based upon 10 recommendations. This was started in June 20th. This is beta, so I think we have a bug on the gain here. This actually didn't multiply against the shares that were bought, so we have a bug here, and we'll fix that. But essentially this lays out your whole investment portfolio, what's your gains, successes, what's your return per trade, 17% within 4 days, which is why I think gain is off. But we also analyze your investment portfolio. So if you're on Schwab, Fidelity, whatever, we can go out, grab your investments, pull in them, and analyze them. In this case, we're analyzing Prep Grow's test Ameritrade account. So we have 1 at risk, 5 are good. And then we project out what the return is. We show actuals, and we show projected returns month over month. These are projections, these are predictions. And then below that, you just have your stocks. Now, the beauty of this is that when one sells, which sold today, it's replaced by one. So Square was replaced. An option recommendation, the one sold was Flex. Excited it sold. If you look at the recommendations. Now, if you want to buy any of these, we also tie into your broker. So it's one click buy. If I just click on this, all I have to do is click buy. It handles the buying, and it also, as it buys and the buy execute, it immediately places a sell order based on the targeted gain. So prep to grow is moving into portfolio space in terms of dramatically simplifying portfolios and how do you buy them. Again, hiding the complete complexity. We call this one click buy. Not to steal stuff from Amazon, but it's a one click investment. Buy and sell orders placed all at once. So let's jump into what's happening this week. So Xilinx, let's talk about Xilinx. Again, don't think they're actually announcing, but there's something happening next week. Again, it doesn't make a lot of sense as they just announced the fiscal year in Q1. Xilinx, based in San Jose. I know the company, we've been tracking them since 2012, so quite a long time. Typical true Silicon Valley company. A little bit dated just from culture and that kind of stuff. I've known a few people there. They're not terribly progressive, just because they're semiconductor company. Margins very thin, so they don't have a lot of margin for investments. Free lunches and that kind of stuff. But generally, Xilinx is a well thought of general technology company. Again, related to chips, ASIC design. But they're pretty good. We're projecting that they're a little bit overpriced. We're recommending put on this, so we're expecting that they're going to go down about $10. So predicted stock price is 121. We're pretty accurate on Xilinx. Out of 182 recommendations for will it sell within 5 days, our predictions will sell in 5 days based upon a real recommendation. We've been right 163 times out of a 30-day success, a little less. We're at 194 out of 235. Again, these are two separate predictions that the algorithms make. Is something going to happen in 5 days you could profit from, or something going to happen in 30 days that you're going to profit from? 5 days much different than 30 days in options. So these guys, not a lot of option volume for this one that we're showing here. Frankly, they haven't had a lot of volume generally. There's nothing that has been unusual really with Xilinx that we have seen. Typically, if you look at unusual option activity, it means that volume here at 2 is greater than open interest at 162. So to make this unusual, you would need this to be 163. And so that's a 1 or greater. That means there's something weird going on. So put for these guys, they've had a 30-day. They're pretty high. We're expecting that they're going to go down about $10. They're down $1 today, or 1%. Again, we actually don't think they're announcing, but for some reason they're showing up that they're potentially announcing. So let's jump into Micron. Most excited about Micron. They're announcing on June 30th. We've been tracking Micron since 2012. They're announcing their Q3. They're based in beautiful Boise, Idaho. I've been there a couple times. Love Boise. Great area, great people. If you can't tell by the name, they do chips. Specifically memory and storage. It's very, very likely you use them in your everyday life, in your phone, in your remote, in your TV, and whatever. They are very, very dominant in the space. I've known folks that worked at Micron. They love it there. Great culture, good people, smart people, good leadership, and very much considered a very positive company as far as we can tell. We have good accuracy with them. We don't make a lot of 5-day recommendations. Micron tends to take a longer cycle to execute against predictions. So 16 out of 19 for 5 days, 44 out of 49 for 30 days. So 30 days is typically the sweet spot for Micron. Don't expect overnight changes to them too much, except that they're announcing. We're projecting that they're going to be up about 6%, so up to 87.92. So these guys have had a lot of unusual option activity. I think just since I looked at them originally an hour ago, their option volume has jumped 6 times since I looked at them. I think they're about 110 when I looked at them this morning before we did the recording. So a lot of unusual option activity on them. They had specifically for this one, which is August 20th, 2021 option at an 85 strike price. This actually had, what was it? A call of 1.96. So essentially doubled the volume on an average day. So now up to 6,385 for option open interest. A lot of unusual option activity that occurred for this again on June 18th. And they're not too pricey. So if we look at their technicals, steady climb up from 72 up to 82. They're not at their 52-week range. Generally think for Micron that they're going to crush their earnings. The algorithms are very bullish on their Q3 specifically. They've had steady, consistent high growth through the entire calendar year. Now there's a caveat around this, two caveats for them. Analysts have a very high expectation from them. So be wary of that, and that ties into kind of any future forward-looking statements. And so if that kind of disrupts the analysts and what they're thinking, it could be an impact for Micron. Again, for earnings are always incredibly risky. We, as Prep to Grow, don't provide recommendations that are close to earnings. We prevent them because it's too volatile. And Prep to Grow, as a strategy for our own investments, we do not invest going into earnings. So we're not going to invest in Micron going into earnings. We'll invest immediately afterwards. But again, you never ever know what's going to happen at earnings. So it's more risky than a short-term option. So just be cautious if you invest going into earnings. So what we saw was that there was a quick pullback as they immediately entered into Q4 growth. It could have been a reconciliation of just their long-term strategy, but there was a dramatic pullback right at the beginning of their Q4. Very dramatic. But what we did see is that post that, about a week later, they spiked to an all-time high growth. So whatever that was, reconciliation strategy or whatever, they're now looking very bullish for their Q4. However, caveat is the algorithms kick that off as an issue for their year and forward-looking guidance. So use caution. We do believe that they're going to crush their Q3. So let's talk about unusual option activity. Nvidia, which is odd. I would never bet against Nvidia as a put. I mean, maybe cyclical stuff, but who knows? So these guys, they're announcing for 2 months. This one is predicting as a put. This is the one that had the usual option activity. We have okay accuracy with it. It's 20% better than flipping a coin, but Prep to Grow wouldn't recommend buying this just because our accuracy is not as good. We don't see, so just use with this caution. Our accuracy is not great on this, but this one specifically had a lot of the usual option activity. So it's the put for Nvidia for August 2021 as a put. The option volume as of today is 48 versus open issue of 6,148. However, on June 22nd, the volume to open interest ratio was 45.4. So somebody bought 2 tons of this. So that was essentially 6,092 volume to, at the time, was 134 open interest rate. So somebody bought a ton of this. Maybe expecting a pullback or something like that. We do expect the Qs to pull back, but it's a pretty large buy on Nvidia. Who knows? Right? Maybe they have some information. Maybe they're making a short-term play against Nvidia. Nvidia is a little spiky, but have a lot of growth on this. So they've pulled back about 1% today. I mean, if you look at the 200-day average, I mean, that's great growth. But use for caution. Again, we're talking about this one. We don't recommend this one. We don't have good accuracy on it. But Nvidia, there was just 2 tons of unusual option activity on June 22nd. And the volume open interest rate was 45.4, which is pretty high. So let's just jump back to the slides and finish off the week. Again, Micron is definitely announcing next week. Xilinx, not sure. So some sites are saying they are. Xilinx analyst side is saying they're not. Unusual activity on Nvidia. Again, bullish on Micron. Caveats are forward-looking guidance. Nvidia, somebody bought a whole lot of puts on them, but we don't necessarily agree on that because we're also predicting calls for Nvidia. But that is the week for the QQQ. Any questions? Always feel free to reach out to us through our site, preptogrow.com. Again, we're raising a seed round. We'd love for anybody and everybody that wants to see us and see you go through the journey of disrupting the pretty terrible current financial advisor and robo-advisor space. I don't know why it's so bad, but those guys are not happy places for investors. But if you'd like to join us, we'd love to have you. If not, we hope you have a great week of trading. Again, we're expecting a bull start. So, a bear to start. So use caution. Happy trading, and we'll talk to you next week.